World War I, 1914 to 1918, often called the Great War, was one of the most devastating conflicts in human history. It reshaped nations, destroyed empires, and changed the nature of warfare forever. What made it especially tragic was that very few people expected it to become such a long, destructive global war. Many believed it would be short, decisive, and even glorious. Instead, it became a brutal struggle marked by unprecedented suffering. A world on the edge. Before the 1914, before World War I, Europe appeared powerful and prosperous. Beneath the surface, however, several dangerous forces were at work. 1. Militarism. European nations built massive armies and navies, believing military strength was the key to national security. Germany and Britain in particular competed fiercely in a naval arms race. 2. Alliances. Countries formed complex alliances for protection. Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria, Hungary, Italy. Triple Entente, Britain, France, Russia. These alliances meant that a conflict involving one country could quickly draw in many others. 3. Imperialism. European powers competed for colonies in Africa and Asia, increasing rivalry and distrust among nations. 4. Nationalism. Strong national pride, especially in the Balkans, created tensions. Many ethnic groups wanted independence, threatening large empires like Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire. Together, these factors made Europe a powder keg, waiting for a spark. The spark: assassination at Sarajevo. On June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary was assassinated by Gavrilo Princip, a Serbian nationalist in Sarajevo. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia and declared war. Due to alliances, Russia supported Serbia, Germany supported Austria-Hungary, France supported Russia, Britain entered after Germany invaded Belgium. Within weeks, Europe was at war, and soon the conflict spread across the globe. Why the war was nobody expected one. Overconfident leaders believed modern weapons would lead to quick victories. Many soldiers expected to be home by Christmas 1914. 2. Old war-thinking military strategies were outdated. Generals planned wars of movement, but industrial weapons made defense far stronger than attack. 3. Underestimating industrial warfare. Machine guns, heavy artillery, poison gas, submarines and tanks caused destruction on a scale never seen before. Trench warfare, a living nightmare. On the Western Front, armies dug long lines of trenches stretching from the North Sea to Switzerland. Life in the trenches was horrifying. Mud, rats, lice, and disease, constant shelling and sniper fire. Soldiers lived under extreme stress, leading to shell shock, now known as PTSD. Battles like Verdun and the Somme killed or wounded millions for only a few miles of land. A truly global war. Though it began in Europe, World War I became global. Colonies supplied soldiers and resources. Fighting occurred in Africa, the Middle East, and Asia at sea. Submarines threatened global trade. In 1917, the United States entered the war after German submarine attacks and the Zimmermann telegram, tipping the balance against Germany. The end of the war. In 1918, fresh American troops and new strategies helped the Allies push back German forces. Germany sought an armistice, and on November 11, 1918, fighting officially ended. Consequences of World War I. Human cost: over 16 million, dead millions, more wounded or traumatized. 2. Political changes: collapse of major empires, German, Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, Russian. New nations formed, especially in Eastern Europe. 3. Treaty of Versailles. Germany was blamed for the war and punished harshly. Loss of territory, heavy reparations, military restrictions. These terms created resentment and economic hardship, planting the seeds for World War II. Conclusion. World War I was the war nobody expected, but one that changed the world forever. What began as a regional dispute became a global catastrophe due to alliances, nationalism, and misplaced confidence. The war showed the terrifying power of modern industrial warfare and left deep scars on humanity. its lessons about diplomacy, militarism, and the cost of war remain relevant today. New weapons and the changing nature of war. World War I introduced modern warfare on a terrifying scale. Traditional cavalry charges and old battlefield tactics proved useless against new technology. 1. Machine guns. Machine guns could fire hundreds of rounds per minute, making frontal attacks extremely deadly. Thousands of soldiers were killed within minutes during failed assaults. 2. Heavy artillery. Artillery caused the majority of casualties. Continuous shelling destroyed landscapes, villages, and lives, turning fertile land into wastelands. 3. Poison gas. Poison gas was first used in 1915. Chlorine, phosgene, and mustard gas caused blindness, severe burns, and slow, painful deaths. Gas masks became essential, but fear of gas attacks never disappeared. 4. Submarines, U-boats. Germany used submarines to sink enemy ships. Civilian ships were often targeted, which angered neutral countries, especially the United States. 5. Tanks and aircraft. Tanks were introduced to break trench deadlocks, while airplanes evolved from reconnaissance tools into fighter and bomber aircraft. These weapons made World War I far more destructive than any previous conflict. Life beyond the battlefield. Impact on civilians. World War I was not only fought by soldiers. Civilians suffered greatly. Cities were bombed. Food shortages caused hunger. Blockades ruined economies. Many civilians lost family members and livelihoods. Role of women. With men at the front, women took on new roles. Factory workers producing weapons, nurses treating wounded soldiers, transport and administrative roles. This shift helped advance women's rights and contributed to women gaining the right to vote in several countries after the war. The Russian Revolution and its impact. By 1917, Russia faced severe shortages, military defeats, and public unrest. This led to the Russian Revolution, overthrowing the monarchy. The new Bolshevik government withdrew from the war in 1918. Russia signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk with Germany. Russia's exit allowed Germany to focus on the Western Front, but only temporarily. The entry of the United States. The United States initially remained neutral. However, several events changed this stance. German U-boat attacks on neutral ships. The Zimmermann Telegram, which proposed a German-Mexican alliance against the U.S. In 1917, the United States joined the war, providing fresh troops, weapons, and economic strength to the Allies. This marked a turning point, the final year in German defeat. In 1918, Germany launched a final offensive but failed. Exhausted soldiers, lack of supplies, and growing opposition at home weakened the country. The Allied forces, strengthened by American troops, launched successful counterattacks. Germany's allies collapsed one by one, forcing Germany to seek peace. Psychological impact of the war. World War I left deep psychological scars. Many soldiers suffered from shell shock. Survivors struggled to return to normal life. Literature and art reflected despair and disillusionment. The war destroyed the old belief that war was glorious or honorable. Why World War I changed the world forever. World War I redefined warfare, ended centuries-old empires, changed social structures, altered global politics. It marked the end of the old European order and the beginning of a troubled modern world. Conclusion. Extended reflection. World War I was a tragedy born from ambition, fear, and miscalculation. No one expected a regional conflict to spiral into a 4-year global disaster. The war taught humanity harsh lessons about the cost of violence, the dangers of unchecked nationalism, and the importance of diplomacy. Though the guns fell silent in 1918, the consequences of World War I continued to shape the world for decades to come. The war outside Europe. Although World War I is often described as a European war, it affected many regions across the world. Asia-Japan joined the Allies and captured German territories in China and the Pacific. The war increased Japan's influence in Asia, especially after Germany's defeat. European colonies in Africa became battlefields. African soldiers were forced to fight for their colonial rulers. The war disrupted local economies and caused widespread suffering. The Middle East. The Ottoman Empire fought on several fronts. Arab revolts, supported by Britain, weakened Ottoman control. After the war, European powers divided Middle Eastern lands, ignoring local aspirations. This global involvement made World War I the first true world war. The collapse of empires, World War I, destroyed four major empires. 1. German Empire. The Kaiser abdicated and Germany became a republic. 2. Austro-Hungarian Empire. It broke apart into smaller nations like Austria, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia. 3. Ottoman Empire. Its territories were divided, leading to modern Middle Eastern states. 4. Russian Empire. The monarchy ended and the Soviet Union emerged. The fall of these empires reshaped the world map. The Paris Peace Conference, 1919. After the war, world leaders met to decide the future of defeated nations. Key figures: Woodrow Wilson, USA; Georges Clemenceau, France; David Lloyd, George Britain. Wilson's 14 points. Wilson proposed peace based on fairness, self-determination, and the creation of the League of Nations to prevent future wars. However, many of his ideas were ignored. Failure of the peace settlements. The peace treaties created more problems. Borders were drawn without considering ethnic groups. Germany felt humiliated and unfairly treated. Economic instability spread across Europe. Instead of lasting peace, the treaties created anger and resentment. Failure of the peace settlements. The peace treaties created more problems. Borders were drawn without considering ethnic groups. Germany felt humiliated and unfairly treated. Economic instability spread across Europe. Instead of lasting peace, the treaties created anger and resentment. The League of Nations, a missed opportunity. The League of Nations was created to maintain peace, but it failed because the United States never joined. It had no army to enforce decisions. Major powers often ignored its authority. Its failure showed how fragile post-war peace really was. Cultural and literary impact. World War I deeply influenced culture. Writers like Wilfred Owen and Eric Maria Remarque described the horrors of war. Art became darker and more critical of authority. A generation lost faith in traditional values. This period became known as the Lost Generation. Long-term impact and lessons. World War I taught humanity painful lessons. Modern wars cause mass destruction. Nationalism can be dangerous. Poor peace agreements can lead to future conflicts. Sadly, many of these lessons were ignored, leading to World War II just 2 decades later. Final conclusion. World War I was not planned to be a global catastrophe. It began with political miscalculations and ended by transforming the world. Millions died, empires vanished, and the modern age of warfare was born. It remains a powerful reminder of how quickly peace can collapse and how difficult it is to rebuild. Economic devastation. After the war, World War I left Europe economically shattered. Industries were destroyed. Railways, farms, and cities lay in ruins. Governments were deeply in debt. Countries like Britain and France borrowed heavily, especially from the United States. Germany faced extreme economic pressure due to war reparations, leading to inflation, unemployment, and poverty. These economic problems weakened democratic governments and increased political instability across Europe. Social changes and a shattered generation. The war changed society forever. The Lost Generation. Millions of young men were killed or permanently injured. Survivors often felt emotionally broken and disconnected from society. Many questioned authority, tradition, and nationalism. Changing class structures. The old aristocratic order weakened. Ordinary soldiers and workers demanded greater political rights, leading to the expansion of democracy in several countries. Women and social progress. Women's wartime contributions proved their capability beyond domestic roles. As a result, women gained voting rights in many nations. More women entered education and professional work. However, equality remained incomplete. Nationalism reborn, a dangerous force. Although nationalism helped unite people during the war, it became more extreme afterward. Defeated nations felt humiliated. New nations struggled with ethnic conflicts. Minority groups were often oppressed. In Germany, anger over defeat in the Treaty of Versailles fueled extremist movements, including the rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. How World War I led to World War II. World War I did not bring lasting peace because the peace treaties were harsh and unfair. Economic crises weakened governments. International cooperation failed. The unresolved tensions, especially in Germany and Eastern Europe, directly contributed to the outbreak of World War II in 1939. Thus, World War I can be seen as the first chapter of a longer global conflict. Remembrance and memory. The scale of death led nations to honor the fallen. War memorials were built across Europe. Armistice Day, November 11, became a day of remembrance. The phrase "never again" symbolized hopes for peace. Despite these promises, humanity failed to prevent another world war. Lessons for the modern world. World War I teaches us that diplomatic failure can have global consequences. Military power alone cannot ensure peace. Fair and just peace settlements are essential. International cooperation must be strong and sincere. These lessons remain relevant in today's world. Overall conclusion. World War I was truly the war nobody expected. What began as a political crisis escalated into a global disaster due to alliances, nationalism, and poor leadership. It destroyed empires, reshaped societies, and introduced the horrors of modern warfare. Though more than a century has passed, the legacy of World War I continues to shape global politics and human understanding of war and peace. The role of propaganda. During World War I, governments used propaganda to control public opinion and maintain support for the war. Posters encouraged men to enlist. Newspapers exaggerated victories and hid defeats. Enemy nations were portrayed as evil and inhuman. Propaganda created unrealistic expectations and helped explain why people initially supported a war they did not fully understand. War and technology, progress at a terrible cost. The war accelerated technological progress. Advances in medicine and surgery saved lives. Communication improved through telephones and radio transportation technology advanced. However, these improvements came at the cost of massive human suffering. Technology that could improve life was instead used for destruction. Medical challenges and innovations. Doctors faced injuries never seen before. Shrapnel wounds, gas, burns, psychological trauma. This led to development of plastic surgery, improved battlefield medicine, recognition of mental health injuries. Modern emergency medicine owes much to lessons learned during World War I. The moral questions of the war. World War I raised serious moral questions. Was the war avoidable? Were political leaders responsible for the suffering? Can war ever be justified? Many thinkers and writers argued that blind nationalism and obedience to authority led to unnecessary destruction. The youth and the war young men were especially affected. Many lied about their age to enlist. Entire school classes were wiped out. Survivors carried lifelong trauma. The loss of youth weakened nations socially and economically for decades. World War I in history and education. World War I is studied not only as a historical event, but as a warning. It shows how quickly peace can collapse. It teaches the danger of alliance systems. It highlights the human cost of political mistakes. Education about the war aims to prevent future conflicts. Final reflection. World War I stands as a tragic reminder of humanity's capacity for self-destruction. It was a war driven by fear, pride, and misunderstanding, yet paid for with millions of innocent lives. Calling it the war nobody expected reflects how unprepared the world was for its scale, duration, and consequences. Closing thought. The real tragedy of World War I is not only that it happened, but that it could happen again if its lessons are forgotten. Major battles that defined the war. Battle of the Marne, 1914. This battle stopped the German advance into France. It proved that the war would not be short and led directly to trench warfare on the Western Front. Battle of Verdun, 1916. One of the longest and bloodiest battles in history. France lost hundreds of thousands of soldiers defending a symbol of national pride. Battle of the Somme, 1916. Known for massive casualties, especially on the first day. It showed the terrible cost of modern warfare. Battle of Passchendaele, 1917, fought in mud and rain. This battle symbolized the futility and suffering of trench warfare. Important leaders and figures, military and political leaders, Kaiser Wilhelm II, Germany, Emperor of Germany during the war, Georges Clemenceau, France, determined to defeat Germany, David Lloyd, George of Britain, led Britain during the final years, Woodrow Wilson, USA, promoted peace and international cooperation, influential individuals, Wilfred Owen, war poet who exposed battlefield horrors, T. Lawrence of Arabia, played a key role in the Arab Revolt. These individuals shaped both the war and its memory. World War I timeline 1914, assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, war begins 1915, poison gas used, Italy joins the Allies 1916, Verdun and Somme battles 1917, Russian Revolution, USA enters war 1918, German defeat, armistice signed. This timeline shows how the war slowly expanded and intensified. Why the war lasted so long? The war dragged on because defensive weapons were stronger than offensive strategies. Leaders refused to admit defeat. Economic and human resources were continuously mobilized. Pride and fear prevented early peace negotiations. World War I as a turning point in history. World War I marked the end of old monarchies, the rise of new political ideologies, the beginning of modern international relations. The world after 1918 was fundamentally different. Final assessment. World War I deserves its name as the war nobody expected. It exposed the dangers of overconfidence, militarism, and political arrogance. What was expected to be a short conflict became a 4-year nightmare that reshaped the world. Its memory remains a powerful lesson for future generations. Germany. From confidence to collapse, Germany entered World War I, confident in its military strength and strategic planning. The Schlieffen Plan aimed for a quick victory over France, but its failure led to prolonged trench warfare. As the war continued, resources became scarce due to blockades, civilian morale declined. Hunger and protests spread. By 1918, revolution broke out, forcing the Kaiser to abdicate. Germany's defeat shocked its people and deeply influenced future politics. France. Survival and sacrifice. France suffered immense destruction, especially on its own soil. Entire villages were destroyed. Millions of French soldiers died or were wounded. Verdun became a symbol of national resistance. Despite heavy losses, France emerged victorious but deeply weakened, determined to prevent future German aggression.